So about a week ago, it turned out that a build of Garden Warfare 1 was found online that's labelled as an alpha version of the game. I didn't think much of it since I thought we'd already got everything we could get out of Garden Warfare 1 with the Xbox 360 build being data mined, but I was really surprised when I saw what was left over in this build. So today we're going to be taking a look at what's hidden inside the oldest version of Garden Warfare 1 we have. I wasn't able to play this build myself, so all footage in this video will be taken from people who posted videos in the Garden Warfare 1 modding server. The people who posted the video's name will be in the corner whenever I share footage, and if you want to join the server for yourself, the link will be in the description below. With all that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So I think we should start off by figuring out where this build is from, since there's multiple different versions of Garden Warfare 1 that was showcased while it was getting developed on like E3 and the PvZ YouTube channel. So I showed at the start of this video that this build is from December 2013, which puts it perfectly between these two videos that PopCap released on their YouTube channel in both November and December. The most notable part about the November build of the game is that it used a completely different UI to what the final release had. And the video from the December version of the game has the UI that we have now with only some slight adjustments like the coin icon. So the question is, what version of the UI is this build of the game using? Well, if you can see on screen here, it's the old one. Which means now we can get all of these textures ripped from the files, and you can see on screen here how they all look. They haven't made more different projectiles for each of the different primaries and only one for each of the classes. But with that out the way, I think it's now time we take a look at the different content that's left over in this build. And I think there's no better place to start off than taking a look back at the Gravedigger to see what's left over for him. Now if you don't know what this character is, I'll give you a quick summary, but I do have a full video on the Gravedigger already on my channel. He was the original version of scientist that we're working on before they decided to change things up and make it more cartoony, and then made the scientist. But the question is Gravedigger inside this build? The answer is yes, but not in the way you'd think, because in this version of the game they are working on turning him into Baron von Bats. I believe at one point he was meant to just be a boss, but then they decided to use him as a placeholder while they got Baron von Bats designed. But what is actually left for Gravedigger in this build? Well, let's begin by seeing where his weapons are. So his weapons are left over with all of the other playable classes instead of being relegated to the old folder that he was put in when the game came out. And as for what's inside the Gravedigger folder, there's 3 different weapons: the Grave Shotgun, the Arm Grenade, and the Healing Gravestone. None of this is new, unfortunately, because all this was left over in the Xbox 360 launch version, but it is quite interesting that the Grave Shotgun has a different damage value. The Grave Gatling weapon is also left over in this build as well. I don't really know what its purpose is still to this day, so there's not really much else I can add on that. Like I mentioned earlier, if you want to know more about the Gravedigger, there's a video I've already made covering everything. But as for the model, it is actually used in the game at the minute as a placeholder for Baron von Bats. There's 2 models they left over, both of them being used for Baron for some reason, and I can confirm they are both identical. There's Browncoat Zombie _ Costume Gravedigger, this is the one that is just Baron von Bats in the normal game. And then there's Gravedigger 2 _ Skinned Mesh Proxy. This one's the one I think they would have used when he was a playable class. There's also some unused graphics for Gravedigger, but none of them are particularly new. We've got the spotting icon here that was left over in the PC launch build, so it's not particularly new. I'll cover the other unused graphics on this texture map later on, along with this texture map as well, which is the boss slots one, but as you can see here there is a screen door zombie, which I assume would be the Gravediggers. This is entirely speculation because this could just be a random screen door zombie that was meant for something else. The final thing I want to show now is the Gravedigger's model in game so you can see how it would look. You can see here he's built over Browncoat here, and it seems to animate perfectly fine, which makes me think he was going to use a Browncoat skeleton originally. Or they've just made it so he uses Browncoat skeleton to work with the whole Baron von Bats thing. I think it's time we now look into the new stuff that was found in this alpha build. So first I want to talk about the different names that the maps in the game had. There's only a few maps with different names, but I thought it was quite interesting, so I'll mention them all for you now. So Chomp Town was going to be called Urban Center, Cactus Canyon would have been called Desert Palms, Port Scallywag would have been called Pirate Museum, Sharkbite Shores would be called Harbour Village, and finally Zomboss Estate would have been called Zomboss Mansion. These names could just be entirely placeholders, but considering that they were left in the game and some of these maps were playable in an early version of the game, I think these were initially going to be the names I would have gone with. But now it's time to talk about the Gardens and Graveyards map, since none of this was showcased until that one video that was uploaded where it was more finished. So the first thing is the little pea shooter scarecrow is not animated in this version. And once the zombies capture the point, there's a weird statue that appears on the top of the garden. It seems to look like a disco zombie, which is just a bit odd to me since they did have a model of Zomboss already finished. Now if you watch my Did You Know video for Garden Warfare 1 and 2, I mentioned that there's gardens left over in each of the finals in Garden Warfare 1. Now in this version of the game, it actually marks the gardens whenever you get on the final point, so you can see where the garden is normally hidden. There's no music in the final areas, so the only music you get is from the gardens, and it is also based off range, so if you're close to the garden it will play it louder. As for the final cutscenes on these maps, there's none. Instead of playing the cutscene, it just fades to black and then shows the end of round sequence. In the final game, the engineer has a bunch of different turret spots that he can build around the objective in Walnut Hills. But in this alpha version, the engineer can build a bunch of turrets around the objective in all the other maps as well. These were seemingly removed in the final game. Another thing I found quite interesting is when the player died to one of the cob cannons in the final on Main Street, the game says the player died, which is quite abnormal for a game like Plants vs Zombies to refer to players as dying instead of being vanquished. These next things are all directly relating to the Driftwood Shores map. The first thing is that when you get shot out of a cannon, it does an explosion wherever you land. And the Mega Flower didn't have any animations just yet, instead just being a still model. And the final thing for this map is that the Flax cannons are reusing a lot of fire piece sound effects. So now I'm going to talk about unused abilities that are left over in this version of the game. All of the abilities in the Garden Variety Pack were left over in this build, but they're all unfinished as you'd expect. I'm not going to talk about every single one since a lot of the abilities are just a version from the final game with placeholder sound effects, or just a copy paste from the original ability. But there is two that I think are worth noting, and that's both Energy Warp and the Long Bomb. First of all, the Energy Warp has a completely different name in this version of the game, going with the name Cloaking Device. As for the Long Bomb, it goes by the name Imp Hunt Cluster in this version of the game, and it seems to be built off an earlier version of Imp Hunt, where instead of All-Star just shooting the imp and it goes flying, it spawns in a little imp and it follows and tracks plants down. This is the same version of Imp Hunt that's shown off in the tutorial video for the All-Star. Now I'm not sure if this thing is left over in the final version of the game, but for some reason the All-Star has some metadata for a weapon called Hulk Slam. There's no weapon associated with it and only metadata, so I don't really know what this is. I'm adding this back after editing this part of the video because I found something else pretty interesting. So I think it's quite clear that this weapon might be related to that one concept art where the All-Star is really buff, as you can see on screen. But I found something else that might be relating to this, and that's because I was looking for all the tutorial videos that are left over in this build, since they are quite different from the ones that are in launch. And I sent the files relating to the tutorials over to Spret, and he converted them into MP4s for me so I could view them. And we found this really weird animation for the All-Star that happens at the end of the Imp Hunt tutorial. Now I have a feeling that this could be somewhat related to the whole buff All-Star concept art in some way, but either way this is an unused animation that's in the game. I'm going to show every single one of the tutorial videos in full at the end of this video if you want to see them. Now let's get back on with the regular video. In Garden Warfare 1 there's multiple different cutscenes that play when you get a super boss wave. Well, left over in this version of the game is multiple different cutscenes that are early versions of them. The ones that are left over is one for the Disco Zombie, one for the Gargantua, and one for the Yeti. So I'm going to show you the cutscene and then the version that's in the game now, and then I'll talk about what the differences are. The audio on the alpha videos will be taken from the current day version since we don't have the audio from the alpha versions at the minute. And thanks to Spret for converting the files into watchable MP4s for me. The first thing you can notice is that the modern version uses dirt on the ground while the other one has grass. You can also see in the alpha version that Gargantua's model just pops into existence. Imp's right eye clips through his head when he's turning as well in the alpha version. The alpha version's Imp also doesn't load in all of his LODs immediately, which is why he's low quality when he pops out the ground. This is probably because the alpha cutscene was recorded in-game while the modern one was probably rendered in-engine. The lighting on the alpha version is also just not as good as the modern version too. Now onto the Yeti's cutscene. Straight away you can tell that the island the Yeti is on is just a desert for the alpha version. This cutscene takes place on Sharkbite Shores just outside of the player's view, and it's quite clear that they didn't swap out the textures from being a beach to a snow area. The texture for the snow is still in the current day version of Garden Warfare 1, even though these cutscenes aren't rendered in real time anymore. Along with the island being a beach instead of a snow area, you can see there's no effects on Yeti and the camera doesn't move as much. Next I want to talk about a little hidden sound effect that was found inside of this build of the game. At the start of an ops game in Garden Warfare 1 it will play a little jingle when the plant spawns for the first time, and for some reason there's a version of this exclusively for the zombies as well, which is completely different to what the plants have, and it's quite odd because there's no version of Graveyard Ops in this game. I'll play it for you so you can hear what it sounds like. There were some different versions of pre-existing tracks left over in this build, and VixoChan has uploaded all of them onto his YouTube channel, so I'll leave a link in the description below for you. Another little weird thing in this build is that the Yeti's model is slightly different. You can see here that the Yeti doesn't have any 3D fare in his model, instead it's just textures. I'd assume this was done for performance. There's also a different end screen when you finish an ops game. This is what it looks like. There's no end of round leaderboards music in this version of the game, so it just uses the booth music instead. So now it's time to talk about some unused variants that are left over in this version of the game. If you mod Garden Warfare 1 or 2, these names might be quite familiar to you. And the characters' names are Stealth Chomper and Frenzy Chomper. These two characters are ones that are listed on one of the concept arts for a bunch of Chomper variants for Garden Warfare 1, but they never made the cut in the final game. The reason these names are quite familiar to modders is because these are the internal names used for both Hot Rod Chomper and Count Chompula. As for the visuals, the Stealth Chomper is just a traditional Chomper with no extra changes, and the Frenzy Chomper is Count Chompula's design without the vampire teeth and no custom body. Now I've taken a look at how these weapons work just to see if they're any different, and they both do have unique gimmicks, but Stealth Chomper's doesn't work. But we do thankfully have descriptions that were left over in the files that I'm assuming are used in the sticker book, so we can read exactly how these characters are meant to work. To begin with is the Stealth Chomper, and his description says, "The Stealth Chomper gets his power from digesting zombies. He starts to lose his health if he doesn't eat zombies for a period of time." The Stealth Chomper's weapon does have a buff inside of it that applies every time he swallows a zombie. The buff's meant to apply the hyper speed effect to the Chomper, and it's meant to alter his movement speed as well, but the movement speed's set to 1, so it doesn't actually make him move faster. My guess is that they were in the middle of turning this character into Hot Rod Chomper when this alpha was made. I think this character's gimmick is a clear indication as to why it got scrapped. As for the Frenzy Chomper, his description says, "Frenzy Chomper gets his energy from chomping zombies, giving him a short speed boost after each victim is swallowed." Now unlike Stealth Chomper, we actually have footage of how this character would work. You can see that this character is identical to how Hot Rod Chomper works in the final game. It does feel like this variant's a lot more close to being finished since he has a model unlike Stealth Chomper. Now I want to finish off this video by going through a bunch of unused graphics that I've found in this version of the game. This is a placeholder graphic for when you go to select a game mode in the multiplayer area. This is an icon for one of the co-op maps, but it's using a bit of concept art for Walnut Hills we've never seen before. This texture has all the ability icons on it, and you can also see here some remnants of Battlefield 3 since this game was built off Battlefield. These are the buttons that are used in the game for the UI. You can see all the PlayStation ones are just taken directly from Battlefield 3. This is an early version of the ability info texture. It's missing stuff relating to the ice effect that will go on your UI. This is part of the UI for the character selection screen. This was changed later on after the game came out, so this is technically unused. This part of the Ops Pi info is missing all the stuff relating to boss mode. This is an early version of the boss slots UI. You can see here there's a red Gargantua that's meant to be the Giga Gargantua, but he's not finished just yet. The screen door zombie I mentioned earlier is also on here, along with the coin icon being completely different, and the money bag icon's a bit different too. This is the spotting icon UI, and I'm going to go through it bit by bit because there's quite a lot to talk about. You can see here that the Giga Gargantua has a spotting icon as well, with it just being a red Gargantua. The Gravedigger's also got an icon here too, and the sun icon is a bit different to what it is in the final game. There's this weird Crazy Dave hand here too. I don't really know what it was used for. I'd assume it was something to do with boss mode though. This is an early version of the sticker book screen. You can see it's using different fonts and there's also a different colour. There's quite a lot of different assets that are unused in this version of the game, but it is a pain to export each of them, so I'm not going to show any more right now. But in case you're curious, there's a bunch of different icons for the cosmetics that are early versions with different renders for the characters. But that's about it for this Garden Warfare 1 alpha. There's probably even more that hasn't been discovered just yet, so if you want to see anything else that gets discovered, join the Garden Warfare 1 modding Discord server because that's where all the data mining is taking place. Like I said earlier on in the video, I'll link a zip file in the description below that will have a bunch of the different graphics that are unused in this version in case you want to use them for a mod for Garden Warfare 2. But that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. I'm now going to show you each of the tutorial videos that were left over in this alpha build, so if you want to stick around for them, feel free to. But I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.